All right, we are live. Let me get the music started. There we go, just a little bit of background music. Turn it up one more. And welcome, YouTube. Hey, this is going to be a new segment on my channel. This will happen every single time conference happens, except when I'm on my mission. It's technically part of Let's Talk, but it's kind of sort of different and separate. And I will probably do this one more like sitting down in an environment with less distractions where I can just focus on what I'm talking about. And, not, ooh, look at these flowers. Less distractions. I'm not going to be reading any comments until after I'm done saying what I'm going to say for this video. So if anybody hops on, not reading your comments until afterwards. And I might mention, like, hey, someone's watching, maybe. Or, if someone leaves a comment, I might say I'll get to those at the end and go back to what I'm saying. Because this is the first time I'm doing it. I've only listened to the first session of October 2018 General Conference. I had work for, the other sessions and whatnot, and I am going to listen to them. I listened to that one today. I'm probably going to listen to another one tonight. But, what else? Oh, a few other things I need to get out of the way before we talk about first conference. I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We are also known as Mormons. I'm a member, so I am going to... What I say doesn't specifically represent what the church would say. These are kind of my views and opinions here. I am trying to represent the church in a good manner and light, and I want what I say to be in line with some of the things that they might say, and uplift and bring people closer to the gospel. But if I say something that's not right, let me know down in the comments below. I'll be doing corrections inside of the description, if there are any. Hopefully there aren't. And I'm going to make sure I look up if anybody says any corrections down there. And the other important thing is, we're dealing with commandments directly from God. For the most part. And so, it doesn't necessarily matter what we feel, as long as we say, okay, thy will be done. Because there's not much else you can do. There are certain instances where we're dealing with things like, hey, here's a challenge, read the Book of Mormon in this amount of time. And that's not really a commandment or new church doctrine or policy. That's an invitation. Those things are beneficial and useful. In some... Oops. Realized. There we go, we're good. It should loop. Yeah, in some instances, we have... No, so in certain instances, that maybe isn't necessary on an individual level. Maybe you're already good at reading the scriptures. Maybe you're doing it at a pace that's good for you. Maybe, for me, I listen to the scriptures, so maybe the pace that you're doing is good and you're able to actually understand and get a lot out of it, and reading it faster might not be beneficial. But don't discount it. I've come to learn that could be beneficial for me too. Recently, my singles ward, and my singles stake, young single adult stake, did a Book of Mormon challenge, reading it in so many days, which for a lot of people is good, especially if it kind of gets you, like, even if you were only in it for winning the special dinner, not the best reason, but if you were and you got actually reading the scriptures a little more than usual, that's good. There were some good positive side effects to your not so perfect reason. For me, I just said, I'm just going to keep listening to the one chapter I do every single day. Especially since there are a lot of people that talk about how, and I have problems reading the scriptures every day. I'm like, wait, how does... Oh, right. I have to put myself in other people's shoes. And I'm 99% good at that. There are some times lately that I have missed listening to a chapter in the day, and it caused issues. Well, No, it didn't necessarily cause issues. My day just wasn't as nice and peaceful in many cases. But I am pretty good at listening to the scriptures every single day. So most of the time we're dealing with new policies and doctrine here, and some of the time it's gonna be other stuff that has some flexibility. So, and the big thing too, I was thinking, you know, and so I didn't read faster. I kept doing one chapter a day. I felt that was good for me. I am working on getting better at actually kind of studying them versus just listening to them. Like, currently now, I spend at least a minute after I listen to the chapter, answer some questions. What was it about? What did I learn? Like, how can I apply it in this day? And those are two basic questions that I answer when I listen to the scriptures each day. Some days I'm more distracted, and so, well, how I read scriptures and stuff, that's really for another video. But the big thing is, I was thinking, that's kind of the best for me. And then the Spirit kind of came in and said, you could read the scriptures faster. One chapter a day is the easiest for you. It works. But there would be some benefits from reading faster. And so maybe not say it's the best, but yeah. I was like, oh, okay, you're right. Sorry. Try not to get emotional, because I used this song when I cremated my bird green. The other thing, now I forgot what I was gonna say. Hopefully I remember. Let's jump into conference. This is the big announcement to our church, which, again, God's commandment, revelation from God, so I accept His will. But, I don't like this one. And this is the first time that I have ever not... Ooh, had a little bit of connectivity issues there. This is the first time that I have ever not liked anything... Well, not like something that has been said in conference or in the church. There are moments here and there where, maybe my mom, and this is a little more between me and my mom, it's just, it's not praiseworthy, lovely, or it's not a good report, praiseworthy, or whatever. I forget exactly how that goes. And partially why I think I forget is because my mom says it so much that I'm just like, just stop saying that. You say that way too much. And it is something that I'm working on, and, it's only every once in a while, thankfully. I'm not watching lots of bad, inappropriate things that she has to say that for. But she just says it way too much. It's like, hey, Mom, I know. Okay, I can tell when something's not great and I'm choosing to watch it. You don't need to remind me. And maybe she does, I don't know. But that is kind of more between me and my mom. But as far as things said in general conference, it's usually been happy things. It's just been different talks and lessons and what can I learn from them. And this one, it just makes me sad to think that it's going away. I really, really, really like 3 hours of church. A lot. I'm also... I forgot to share this. I'll share it later. Anyways. I'm also... In a lot of cases, I'm an all or nothing person. I'm definitely not perfect at that. There are plenty of things I do that's not under the all or nothing thing. I mess up here and there. So, kind of going to church for me is kind of sort of all or nothing. But, except for, like, lately I've been going, like, 2 hours of church when I can, because a lot of times I have work, and then I get off, and so I miss sacrament meeting, but I'll catch the last 2 hours, which is great. So, now, I mean, not counting if they change what time my church is at, which I kind of hope they keep the same because we found it's kind of optimal for singles to have it at 1. Not me personally, I could do any time. It's just for singles in general. So I hope that doesn't change. But so then it's going to mean that I'll only get like 1 hour of church if I happen to have my work schedule where I get off on time. That's not exciting. But I just really like the full 3 hours and the wonderful benefits of it. And the big focus of this is then they're saying now you spend a little more time studying in the home, which I know it's not necessarily this, but to me it sounds like if we told everybody to go home and do some studying after church and other times and do more studying in the home, a lot of people would just say, not for me, I don't really have the time. But if we cut out 1 hour of their church, then they will have time because they were already giving that time for that hour of church. So why not have more? So there's more time for study and they have less of an excuse, which I know that's not the case, but it kind of sounds and feels that way a little bit. And they did mention some good things like families with young children. This could be good for them too, especially when church ends up during their nap time and whatnot for the kids. I recognize that. Also for elderly people, that could be good too for them as well. Some people can't stay that long. They have medical needs and stuff like that. They did mention, though, if you want to stay longer after church and talk, that's fine. If you need to stay longer for whatever reason, great. Which I think will be especially good when we're talking some of the other countries and places outside of the U.S. where you might travel 2 or so, an hour or 2, maybe even on foot to get to church. Then why not? You traveled that long distance, stay longer, talk with people, make the best of your time before going back home and not seeing them for maybe another week or so, which is great. That's something that I do even in just everyday stuff. Like in the past, I've walked like about 50 minutes, maybe an hour to Best Buy or so, and I will spend at least an hour or 2 there, and then finally walk home before I then maybe walk to Best Buy in another several months or so because I need something in or I want to go again. I mean, that was in the past, but I've done that, and so I'm very glad that they made mention that you can stay afterwards if you need to. But I'm just really, really gonna miss it. I also kind of don't like change. And this is a serious thing, like... Oh man, I don't know if I... Okay, I'm gonna... So, the example is Smith's grocery store. They made some changes a little bit to the layout, and also to what the floor is made out of. It used to be this white, not really tile, but more of a vinyl type thing, I think. But because I don't like change, I recognize that the changes they made to the store were good, but it made me really sad. And right now, if you could find me a picture, I did a little brief search online and couldn't find anything like pictures and videos of inside the store before they changed. Although I might have one before they changed. I'll have to double check and see. But if you can find if you can find a picture of before the store changed, I don't care what's in the picture, who took the picture, I just want to see a picture of the store before they updated it. I'll pay you $1. And if you can find a video, I'll give you $5. If you really seriously do that, I will. More on that, you can ask questions in the comments. We'll talk about that later. But that's an example of me kind of not liking change. I recognize that it was good, but I still feel nostalgia and I kind of miss the old store. And so part of this is that I'm not much for change, is why I don't necessarily like the idea of this change. Also, a few other things too. I kind of feel some of the organizationalists, I know it will be modified and changed, and the Lord will inspire us in ways to help us do this, but I can see one thing, get together for priesthood, and something happened good during the week that is the perfect example to go with the priesthood lesson, or you kind of want to mention during priesthood because it was nice, but because priesthood won't be every single time, then when priesthood does roll around, you might have forgotten about it, might not be relevant anymore. You might not, and it might not get mentioned. And I'm not necessarily just talking about, like, oh, I was inspired in the scriptures, or I read this talk that inspired me. I'm also talking like the little promptings, and you can say, this week I went and helped this person and I felt the Spirit, and the Spirit prompted me to. I feel like some of that might get lost, and that makes me sad, but I know the Lord's taking that into account too. And also, as I was thinking about this, I'm like, well, what if we still had 3 hours, but we kind of alternated? So, sacrament meeting comes first. Everybody can come and get sacrament meeting. Then the second hour of 1 week will be Sunday school and those lessons. And then it will go into priesthood and relief society. And then the next week it will flip. So then we have priesthood relief society. And then we have Sunday school and stuff. But both will be after sacrament meeting. So people can still partake of some of both. And if you need to, you could go sooner if you have kids. Or you've got, health needs and whatnot. But also, I also kind of feel like I don't necessarily know how this is necessarily accommodating more people, because the important thing about church is sacrament meeting and partaking of the sacrament. The rest of the meeting is good, and there are a lot of great benefits, and it is important, and I love it, but sacrament is the most important. And if you're going and you're catching the sacrament and maybe some of the talks during sacrament meeting and then leaving early, that's okay. Well, I mean, it depends on your reason, but if it's like kids that need naps and whatnot, yeah, that one's okay. Sure, go if you have to go. Dietary needs, health problems, go if you have to go after the sacrament. I kind of feel like there are lots of other ways to look at this and to do it. Still have 3 hours. But then David A. Bednar said that a lot of people focus on like the procedural details of stuff, which that's kind of what I'm doing right now. And it's going to be tough. But I'm going to do it. Excuse me, I'm going to take a mint. See if I can calm my throat so I don't start gagging. So yes, I am going to accept and do this. And, when he said that, it also made me think of, in, like, biblical times. A little bit in the Book of Mormon, but especially so in the Bible with Jesus, New Testament. There was a period where they kind of started phasing out a lot of the law of Moses. And, people they're like, but no, we follow the law of Moses. Why change this? And what's the point? And the thing I've heard a few times that this kind of leads to is, there's a lot of laws and things in place because we're in a temporal world. But once we get into a higher world where there's a lot less of this, once we're with God, we won't need a lot of these rules because a lot of things don't exist. This is kind of a weak example, but it's the only one I can come up with. Right now, there's certain things concerning death and whatnot, and we have baptisms for the dead right now. We won't need that when resurrection happens because everybody's going to be resurrected, and it's kind of the end. And also, we need to repent and be good before we die. Sort of. We believe in purgatory, and there are some other things, and baptisms for the dead can help some people who have already died and not accepted the gospel go on. But at the end, it's essentially the end, and there's no repentance, but we won't need a lot of laws pertaining to that. And so a lot of the rules and things we just need because we're in this temporal body. Or, don't watch, avoid bad media. Well, there's no bad media when the millennium happens, so those rules are very much so for now. So, maybe the 3-hour church, I think it's just a sort of changing and phasing to focus more on family study together and stuff, which again, you could still do that if you had 3 hours of church, and if you can't, well, make time. God is very, very important. And I myself, I'm working to be better at studying, but I'm pretty faithful. Like I said earlier, I've wondered why other people have problems studying the scriptures, but then I put myself in their shoes and I realized it. Very faithful church attender, except when I have work, then I can't go. I also attended Institute every single every single Wednesday night, 7. It was great. You should go to Institute too if you remember. I stopped going because I'd been to every class. I'm not like in line to graduate because I didn't do the papers, but I honestly tried. Ooh, I spent time, like there was one question one time when I was actually gonna like do the paper at the end. I think I did one once, but I read the question and I spent like several days, not constantly, but I would think about it here and there, and my brain just went blank and I couldn't think of an answer. And so yeah, but I did do most of the work and it was great. And when I stopped that, this is something I'm less perfect on, but I started listening to old conference talks. And I'm supposed to do one every Wednesday, but I haven't. Right now I'm working my way through the April 1983 General Conference. So, yeah, but I'm pretty good at it, but I do need to work a little bit better at studying, and especially with the scriptures and whatnot, and that's something that I'm going to try to do, and I'm trying to do regardless of if they gave me an extra hour to have to myself if I so desired. But they've made some good points about it. There was one more thing that was mentioned, I forget what it was. That was good too. I remember Bendar talked about church being woven together as a rope. Oh, he mentioned some of the other changes too, how church back in, I think 1800s, I forget when this ended, but it used to be spread out, like Sunday, I think it was sacrament, and then primary was on like Wednesday, and another day was Relief Society, and it was really spread out. And then they consolidated it into one 3-hour block, which that change I could easily get behind. Well, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not much for change. So maybe back then I would have been like, I'm not a fan of it, but okay, the Lord's will be done. And that's really, really the big thing here. So even though I don't like it, I'm going to do what you say, Lord, and I'm going to follow it. And I know other good things will follow. Like a lot of people in the ward, they have like game nights on Sunday, which I think is good, especially since I'm talking a singles ward where not a lot of people are near their family and whatnot. And it's a good opportunity for them. I've gone to a few of them. You get together, have fun playing games. It's all nice. You're with friends. The games that we play, they're not like necessarily 100% spiritually focused, but being together as friends, especially in this setting, is good and building strength and friendship. And it provides an opportunity, something for people to go and feel welcome and get more involved with the ward. And who knows, you might even help people. Maybe, they go to church and then go home and just feel lonely and bored and not do much. And who knows, could be even worse. Could be doing something they're not supposed to. But then, those are great opportunities. And I'm glad that people in the ward do stuff like that. And so stuff like that will end up filling up this time where needed, and we'll find stuff for it. And I want to go back to also last conference, because there's something I liked. Those changes, those were some relatively big changes, because it seems to me, from what I remember, the conferences from before have mostly been just reminders to do certain things, some calls to action, good people bearing testimonies. But this one, last two have been big changes. They merged the elders quorum and the high priest, which I think is great. especially considering my real father who passed away. He died before it got into effect, but there was a period where I forget which group he was in, but his group was meeting upstairs in a small room in our church, and so he couldn't go meet with them, so he would go join the other group, and they were very welcoming and inviting to him. But I think the merging would help. In this case, especially since that room was small enough that it wouldn't have held everybody. And one of my friends mentioned that, they'd be there for opening exercises. And it's a nice big group, but then all of a sudden, I don't know, they have I forget the numbers, but it's 10 people would leave, and there would be 6 people left, and kind of really split up and divide. And smaller study groups and stuff too, there's benefit to that. That can be helpful. You get more people being interactive in a lot of cases when there's a smaller group. And so a push towards maybe smaller groups could be good too. But combining them was good. They also changed home teaching into, this is one that I actually think is really good too, and something that especially in my singles world a lot of people tried to implement and work before this was in effect. But it used to always be just, did you read the lesson? Did you just read the message to somebody? Yes, you did. Well, great. And while you're there, maybe ask them how they're doing. And, excuse me, they made the really good shift towards it being about finding out how people are. Now the point is, you want to get to know the people that you're supposed to teach, which, not necessarily teach, but they're ministering, I forget what it's called. But you really want to get to know them, which, if it's the same people from before, they're pretty much doing fine. If you ask them, they'd be like, yeah, I'm doing fine. And actually, they could probably help me more than I could help them. Although, if you see this, I'm here and willing to, help out if you need help with something. But the big thing is, we put it more towards, you need to get to know them and then report to leaders about how they're doing. And if you think about it, the bishop can get personal with a lot of people in the ward, but he has responsibility over a lot of people. If you assign people to individual other people, kind of like home teaching and visiting teaching, but a little bit different, and you make the goal get to know them, then you could have people that, I could very well become very good friends with somebody I'm supposed to talk with, and because we become so close, they open up to me, and they tell me about some more issues in a private, personal setting, and then from there, I'm able to help them out in some way. I'm able to talk with them about their problem and help them overcome it. Or, or maybe be like, well, hey, you want to talk to the bishop? This might be good. We can try and set up an interview with you. He's a nice person. We can get you on whatever kind of service you need. Because sometimes people are more comfortable talking about it with people that they know more closely. So that was a very, very good change. I fully support that. The other change was Family Home Evening, which I have a friend who thinks that Family Home Evening was done away with. And she says it was all over the news. And I looked it up right away, and I couldn't find anything on my phone. Not telling her specifically. I was over helping her at her house, but I just looked it up because I was curious, did the news word it that way? But I could find nothing on the internet about it. Family Home Evening has been changed, mostly for the family wards, okay? For singles wards, we're still doing the fun activities and whatnot, and I hope that never changes. That's definitely a thing needed for singles. That's a good opportunity for singles to meet other singles and maybe fall in love and get married, which is kind of the point, even though it's kind of cliche. But Family Home Evening was changed to less of a lessons in the home and a little bit more of a how can you minister to and serve others. And so some examples that I think of, which these have been done in the past before, but the way it used to be, you probably sit down and talk about Joseph Smith or something and try and teach the younger children in the family, or maybe everybody's grown up, just a family as a whole. You try and learn something from a lesson and remind yourself about gospel principles. But with the changes rolled out, maybe it's a little more common to see we're going to bake cookies and take them to somebody kind of a thing. Which is a good change, and I like that. But then also, this reminded me going back to we whacked down church so that we can have more home family study. And they're pushing out new curriculum for families to study together in the house. And they want more family study time. And well, so this to me is kind of like, so why did you cut 3-hour church time and push more family home study time if you just changed family reunion around to be more about service and less about home study? And I get there are a lot of things that have to happen in a certain order that might not make sense. And some of the stuff with the older church back when Joseph Smith was around, we don't know specifically why there was some polygamy going on. Or we don't know specifically why blacks were withheld from the church for so long as having priesthood. Even one of my seminary teachers, not institute but seminary, he remembered, like, when they were preaching and stuff, if they knocked on somebody's, like if somebody referred the missionaries to a black family that was interested, they could go and meet with them and talk with them. But other than that, if they knocked on a black door, they couldn't specifically say from church or whatever. They just had to say hey, we're here talking about Jesus, just reminding people about Jesus and how wonderful he is, oh man, he's so cool. And then, thank you guys for answering the door, bye, kind of a thing. And then, eventually it opened up, and this is my personal opinion, this is kind of sort of speculation, but I believe that God might have had him wait so long because there wasn't necessarily equal rights between blacks and blacks. So the church might have come under some fire for allowing blacks to be in somewhat authoritative positions in the church. I think is maybe a reason why, but I don't know definitively, and that is definitely not the church's stance on the matter, okay? Do not quote me as the church, because I am not. I'm just a member. What else do I want to say on conference? So, yeah, there are a lot of little changes and things. We don't know why. They kind of didn't make sense. A lot of people use that as against the church, like, oh, you didn't let black people in your church for a long time, discrimination, and hey, okay, that's not going to go there. I mean, I kind of did, but it's kind of pointless to argue that with somebody. But so, these are all working towards a greater glory, preparing us for Christ's coming. There are things that might not make sense, but we kind of have to do them. We have to wholeheartedly say yes to those things. I want to bear my testimony. I know that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is true. Joseph Smith was a prophet. My mind just went blank. Spencer W. Kimball. If I got that wrong, I'm so sorry, but Spencer W. Kimball is the prophet of the church today. He does lead this church. That was inspiration from God, even though I'm not happy about 2-hour church. I'm going to follow it. That is direct inspiration, and I follow his command, especially since, I forget where, but there's somewhere mentioned, if anybody on the pulpit of church says that they will strike down, if anybody says something wrong while they're on that pulpit, they will be struck down, which I've always imagined as like a bolt of lightning coming in and killing them without damaging the building. But yes. If you liked this video, leave a like. If you want to see more of this when next conference rolls around, get subscribed. I'm going to have part 2 coming out once I listen to the other sessions of conference that have happened. If this isn't your thing, gospel-wise and whatnot, check out the rest of the channel. I've got plenty of other things that aren't specifically gospel-related. It's not the main focus of this channel. Forgot to mention that at the beginning. One more thing I want to say, too, because I mentioned blacks. this was one thing that I really, really liked. I forget the name of it, but my parents and I were watching a movie recently that I joined them for. It was about a black, I want to say mathematicianist, but she was more like a calculator of math. Like, she was the one sitting down doing the complex equations. And she was actually working for NASA. So, famous person. You can look that up. Really good movie about her. I think she's still alive. But the one thing I mentioned that I really liked is there's one part in the movie where, because back then they had segregated bathrooms. And so she would have to go 40 minutes across the NASA campus to use her bathroom. So she'd grab her books with her, sometimes even running through the rain. And one time, the kind of guy that was in charge of her group on the special project, he was like, where is it that you go so often for the day? Because a lot of people said he's kind of a stern and strict man. He turned out he was somewhat stern and strict, but also he was also pretty kind and relatively fair with things. He was like, where is it you go every day? And, well, to the bathroom. What are you doing there? And why do you spend so long? And there's a little bit of a pause, and then she says, it's because, there's no bathroom for my color over here. There's segregated bathrooms. I'm paraphrasing this, by the way. But there's segregated bathrooms. I have to go 40 minutes across the campus just to get to my bathroom. The very next scene is him over there with a crowbar whacking down that colored bathrooms sign and just completely getting rid of it, and says, from now on, there's no segregated bathrooms. In which, watching that film the whole time, there were a lot of instances where people were making sneer remarks at this black person and about other black people. And I'm just like, you know what I feel like doing right now, even though I need to repent? I'm sorry. But what I kind of felt like is, you know what I want to say to that white librarian? I want to say, you're being mean, and just give her a good old punch in the face. It's what it made me want to do. And so for that one guy, and he was pretty high enough up that he could, do that and stuff in NASA, I was like, oh, yes! Yay! Cool. So, yeah, I thought that was cool. And just an eye into segregation. Anyways, there is going to be part 2 of conference coming up. Once I get the rest of the session to listen to, I'll be sharing my thoughts and inspirations on conference and what I feel about things, just like I did now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in whatever's next.